Welcome to another episode of the Victory Podcast, driven by Audi. I'm your host, Keely Eure, joined by my co-host and former USC quarterback, Cody Kessler. Cody, the Trojans are turning the page this week, and so are we. It's time to preview USC versus Wisconsin on Saturday.
Yeah, I'm excited. It's finally an opportunity to go out there and put that Michigan game behind us. It's the first ever Big Ten game in the Coliseum. It's a sold-out crowd. It's been sold out for a couple weeks now, so I'm really excited for this opportunity for USC. And look, I know there's been a lot of frustration over the last week, and the 24-hour rule has maybe moved on to 48 to 72, but it's time to turn the page, like you said, and really, focus on looking ahead. It's still a very long season. There's a lot to play for this USC football team, and my biggest thing for this week is we're going to learn more about this team on Saturday than we have the entire 3 games combined this season, because you're really going to learn what a team is about when they're faced with adversity, right? When they have a game not go their way, when they lose a close game like that, when it's a heartbreaking loss, it's difficult to, put that behind you and move forward, but it's going to really tell us a lot about the culture and the leadership on this football team.
Not to get ahead of ourselves here in the podcast, but for you, what does turning the page look like on Saturday in the Coliseum if for these Trojans?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough, especially after a game like that that's so physically and emotionally draining. But for me, it's so important to keep the procedure the same, right? The operation of the week, even though that game was tough. It's in Ann Arbor. It's at the big house. It's all those emotions, nationally televised. There were so many high expectations for this football team. We just came up a little bit short, right? And there's so many shoulda, woulda, couldas all over the field, which makes it even that more tough. And I promise you, it keeps you up a little bit at night when you maybe could have made 1 or 2 more plays. But overall, you have to still treat it as a 24-hour rule. That's so important, because if you start overthinking the last week's game, if you can't get over some of those plays against Michigan, if you're still watching film on Michigan, and that's fine to self-scout and to learn from those mistakes. But if you're not already moving ahead to Wisconsin, who just had a bye week and now has 2 weeks to prepare for us, then we're going to be behind. But I don't think that's the culture that we have on this football team. Lincoln Riley obviously knows how to get his team ready to go. But again, it's going to tell us so much about how this football team handles adversity. The great teams figure out how to turn the page, and they don't lose 2 in a row, right? They handle adversity. They come out firing. They're ready to go. They want to get that bad taste out of their mouth, and I really believe we have a football team to do that, and I'm talking to some of the fans here too. This is my, kind of help you out a little bit. Let's all turn the page. Let's move on. We've seen all the comments. There's been some frustration. The coaches have addressed what needs to get fixed. The players have talked about what needs to be fixed. We've talked about it a lot on this podcast, so I'm ready to put that entire game behind us and get ready for Wisconsin.
Alrighty, well, on that note, let's get into the Wisconsin preview. Before we do, just a couple of reminders. Be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. You can also watch the video version on the USC Athletics YouTube channel. And if you ever want to get your voice heard, be sure to look out for a tweet or a question box either on Twitter or Instagram. Our socials are VictoryPodUSC. And I mentioned the past 2 episodes that if you're listening on the audio version, in the description, there's a little link that says send us a text. You can do that through our publishing platform. And we have been getting texts, Cody, which I think is really fun. I actually get an email every time someone texts us, so I get it immediately. And a lot of people were thanking you, Cody, for kind of helping them understand and kind of move on from the Michigan loss after the recap episode.
I appreciate that. And I really try to find a happy medium of being critical for things that need to get fixed. And that's going to apply to this game plan. We'll talk about that here as we get ready for Wisconsin. But also understand that it's not the end of the year. The sky isn't falling. Yeah. There's still a lot of football to be played. There's a 12-team playoff now this year. So all of our goals are still attainable and right in front of us. So it's tough, to find that happy medium, because I am a former player and I love USC football. So I am a little frustrated at some of the issues that happened on Saturday, and that's understandable, and we all are. But it's also important to know we have to turn the page, go out and support this team in the Coliseum on Saturday.
For sure. And I've been around USC fans for a while, so I know how they get. The hopes get high, and then you're crushed. And it was a gut-wrenching loss, so I understand it. But
every season's going to be a roller coaster. Whether you go undefeated, right? And even right now, some of the undefeated teams, Georgia, the number 1 team in the country, well, now Texas, and they've dropped a little bit, and there's been some holes in their defense that people, I think, addressed, or offense. But you can still go undefeated and have those roller coaster of emotions, right? Let's say, for example, we win the game on Saturday, right? We get a 4th down stop on that very last run. Michigan still ran for 290 yards.
There would still be concerns.
You know what I'm saying? There were still big-time plays.
Of course.
Now, we would feel better about ourselves, and we would feel great about being 3-0 and getting our first conference win and having 2 ranked wins already in the first 3 games. But we would still have to address the offensive line issues. We still have to address stopping those big-time runs. We did a great job of in-game adjustments and handling, those first half mishaps and not really letting it transition into the second half. So I was so happy with all that. But if we would have won by 4 points, we still would be having these conversations about what needs to be fixed. So it wouldn't just be an ultimate high like we've been riding the first couple of weeks. But like I said, I try to find the happy medium. It's going to be a long season. There's going to be ups and downs. You just got to hang on tough and ride the wave and just know that we have a great coaching staff and a great foundation of this football team that can get the job done and bounce back.
Alrighty, well, let's jump into the Wisconsin preview. It all starts with the head coach, and I know that's where you like to start as well with the preview, Cody, so take it away.
Yeah, their head coach is Luke Fickell. This is his second full season at Wisconsin. He went 7-6 a year ago with a 5-4 record in the Big Ten. His Badgers are off to a 2-1 start this year. They have wins against Western Michigan and South Dakota, and their one loss comes to Alabama, where they fell short to the Crimson Tide 42-10. They also lost their starting quarterback in that football game early on, so that did affect the outcome. Luke Fickell has 8 years of head coaching experience with a combined record of 71-31, so very experienced head coach. Yeah. Both his coordinators have a ton of coaching experience as well, and we'll get into that in a second. Most notably, though, Luke Fickell was the Cincinnati head coach from 2017 to 2022, where he completely, and I mean completely, turned that football program around. He had 2 conference championships, including going undefeated in the regular season in 2021 before losing to Alabama in the college football playoff, and now Wisconsin is hoping that he can do the same for the Badgers. Now, moving over to the offensive side of the ball, their offensive coordinator is Phil Longo, who's a very recognizable name in the college football world. This is Longo's second season as Wisconsin's offensive coordinator. He has a ton of experience. He has been coaching for 34 years, and in my opinion, he's one of the better offensive coordinators in the entire country. Most recently, he was the offensive coordinator for North Carolina from 2019 to 2022, and before that, he was the offensive coordinator at Ole Miss from 2017 to 2018. While at North Carolina, the Tar Heels combined to rank first in the ACC in passing yards, passing touchdowns, passer rating, rushing yards, and total offense. North Carolina was also inside the top 10 in all of those categories among Power 5 schools. He also helped Sam Howell and Drake May have their record-setting years, and then obviously Drake May went on to be a first-round pick. At Ole Miss, Longo's offense ranked first in passing yards, third in passer rating, and second in total offense in the SEC, which put them inside the top 7 in those categories nationally. Now, Longo is a very good offensive coordinator, and Wisconsin has struggled a little bit on offense this year, and their numbers statistically amongst the rest of Power 4 schools aren't where they should be, and they've had some struggle on the offensive side of the football, but he is phenomenal at game planning. And now you give him a week off and 2 weeks to prepare, especially with a new quarterback. This USC defense has to come out and be ready to go.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. I think some people look at the in the moment numbers and not the track record, and it's clear from what you just listed. He's a guy who knows what he's doing.
Yeah, and I mean, a big argument, too, for, when you read, and I go read all the message boards and like we do here at USC after games and a lot of the comments on podcasts and videos and articles, a lot of their frustration comes from a new coaching staff, but they're still seeing a little bit of turnover from the last regime and obviously the transfer portal and guys coming in. And although Tyler Van Dyke is out now, he was a transfer quarterback in his first year. And then, now you bring in Locke, who's their backup, who's now their starter. He's a younger quarterback with only 5 games of experience. So it's tough to see that sudden burst that we saw for Longo at Ole Miss and North Carolina. But again, there are plays there that they're just not making that you can tell he can game plan very well for an opponent. So we have to be ready to go this week. Now, moving over to the defensive side of the ball.
Yes.
I'm going to start with Mike Tressel first, who's our defensive coordinator, but there's going to be a familiar name coming up that I'm sure USC fans know. But Mike Tressel is a very, very well-respected defensive coordinator. Second season as defensive coordinator at Wisconsin. He is the nephew of legendary Ohio State head coach Jim Tressel, who is a national championship winning coach. Mike Tressel came over from Cincinnati with Luke Fickell, another very experienced coach, and has been coaching since 1996.
Wow.
Most notably, he was at Michigan State from 2007 to 2020, so he was there for 14 years.
That's a long time.
Where he had multiple titles over those years. He started out as a position coach, then he was a special teams coordinator, then he took over as a defensive coordinator for a while, but then most recently he went over to Cincinnati where he was their defensive coordinator in 2021. While at Cincinnati from 2021 to 2022, the Bearcats were first in the AAC in scoring defense, sacks, passer rating, passer yards, total defense, and they were second in third down defense. A very good defensive coordinator who is looking to have that same success now at Wisconsin.
It seems like the same thing we just talked about, their offensive coordinator. Wants to put it together, has the track record, just hasn't fully clicked yet at Wisconsin.
Yeah, that's been the biggest issue for them. And again, it's tough, when you come into your first year, and obviously we saw Danton Lynn have the quick turnover here at USC, and he looked great the first game. The second game, we saw a little bit of cracks on against Michigan, and again, phenomenal in-game adjustments. Great job the second half coming out and fixing some of those issues, but you're going to see that, especially when you're early on. And again, I know this coaching staff's going into their second year, but they have a lot of transfer players all over the field. There's a lot of key players on their defense that are transfer players and well on both sides of the football. So it's difficult in today's era of college football to see that quick turnover. But again, I don't want us to underestimate this coaching staff and the players that they have, because they can get the job done, and they've done it before. Now, their co-defensive coordinator and safeties coach is Alex Grinch. Now, I think it's the same situation here at USC, where Eric Henderson's co-defense coordinator, but Danton Lynn calls the defense. So obviously Grinch has a lot of input, but Mike Tressel is their defensive coordinator. Now, I'm sure USC fans recognize the name Alex Grinch. Grinch was USC's defensive coordinator from 2022 to 2023, and before that, he was Oklahoma's defensive coordinator from 2019 to 2021. Grinch being the co-defense coordinator at Wisconsin makes this game for USC a lot more interesting, right?
Yeah.
And you know, I know sometimes you think, why are we talking about the co-defense coordinators if they're not calling the defense? But I guarantee you this
particular
week,
case,
he's been with Lincoln Riley for a long time now, right? They spend a lot of time together.
How many practices did he go up against this Lincoln Riley offense?
How many meetings? How many one-on-one? How many times were Lincoln and Grinch having one-on-one conversations about, hey, we struggled this week on offense. What's a better way to attack your defense? Or, hey, we're defensively trying to get better because we're going to face air raid offenses in the Pac-12 the last couple of years.
Yeah.
How do we get better, or what are ways to stop you? So there's going to be a lot of back and forth. This is going to be, in my opinion, the ultimate chess match, like we've talked about before, between USC's offense and Wisconsin's defense.
Alrighty, so looking more detailed at Wisconsin's offense, I know you previewed that they haven't put it together yet. Where do they look like statistically through 3 games?
Yeah, their total offense, they're 354 yards per game, which is 96 in college football. Pass offense, they have struggled to find an identity through the air. But again, that's something that we faced last week, a team that was one-dimensional, and we couldn't really get the job done, or we couldn't make those stops, especially early on in that football game. They have 182 yards per game through the air, 104th in college football. Run offense is what they want to do. That's their MO. It's not looking great right now, but they have 3 very good running backs that can break free at any point, so we've got to wrap up this week. We've got to eliminate those big-time plays from a week ago. They're averaging 172 yards per game and 59th in college football. Scoring offense, they're struggling to put points on the board right now. They're 109th in college football at 21 points per game. And then third down, they've been decent. Not great, not terrible. They're right in the middle of the pack with 45%, which is 39th overall in college football. Now, overall, these numbers, like you just mentioned, are not where you would expect a Phil Longo offense to be at. But again, you give him 2 weeks to prepare. And I'm saying this now because we talked about it last week against Michigan.
Yeah.
Everyone started overlooking a little bit. I don't want that to be the case for Wisconsin. I know the team's not going to do that. I know Lincoln Riley is obviously taking this game very seriously, and so are the players. But when you give Phil Longo 2 weeks to prepare against a Danton Lynn defense, we have to come out ready to go on the defensive side of the football, and we've got to get those stops early on and get some momentum.
Now, you mentioned key players. I know Van Dyke is unfortunately out for the season. We have seen Braden Locke a little bit in his time at Wisconsin. What do you see from him as a quarterback?
Yeah, he's my first key player, quarterback Braden Locke, 6 foot, 205 pound sophomore, a younger player this year so far. And this is just going off of last week or 2 weeks ago against Alabama, 13 to 26, 50%, 125 yards and 1 touchdown, a pure pocket passer. He has not shown the ability to take off and run the football. So I think that's interesting. That's a dynamic that Michigan had a week ago. Now, he'll keep you honest. He'll pull it if he needs to. We've got to stay ready for that. But he's not going to be as much of a run-first type of quarterback as we saw from Alex Orji last week. He's a younger player, but he does have some experience, like you just mentioned, Keely. As a freshman in 2023, he appeared in 5 games. He started 3 of those games, and he was 76 for 152, 777 yards, 5 touchdowns, and 1 interception. Now, he will try to force some throws, and he did that against Alabama, but he does a good job of protecting the football. He didn't make a lot of freshman mistakes when you watch his film from a year ago. He didn't throw a ton of picks all over the field and try to force some throws, but he will give you opportunities to make some plays on the football, and we've got to do that in the back end. Now, when you move to the running back room, these are, in my opinion, their 3 best players on offense, and the first one is my first red dot player of the week, running back Ches Malusi, 5'11", 212-pound senior. He leads the team in both carries and yards with 46 carries for 200 yards, 4.3 average, and he has 3 touchdowns. A very solid running back. He runs the football very hard. He also has the speed to hit some of those big-time runs on the ground, so we've got to be ready for that. This is his 6th year in college football.
A veteran.
Yeah, been playing since 2019. Now, the next running back is Cade Yakimelli. He's a 6 foot, 215-pound sophomore, 20 carries, 147 yards, averaging over 7 yards per carry. He's shown some flashes on film of being a very good back. And then the third running back they have is Tawee Walker, 5'9", 215-pound senior. He's an Oklahoma transfer with 26 carries, 92 yards, and 1 touchdown. You may be asking why we're talking about 3 running backs. Well, this is going to be one of the first teams we face this year that use all 3 of them, right? They don't have a 1-2 combo in the backfield. They have a 1-2-3 combo, right? And we'll see a fair share of all 3 of these running backs. Now, moving over to the wide receivers. This is kind of similar to a week ago against Michigan when it came to picking a key player or a red dot player. There's not a lot of production through the air so far this year, especially with Tyler Van Dyke going out.
Yeah.
And some of those earlier football games, they love to run the ball, right? They try to establish a run game first. But the guy that I went with is wide receiver Will Pauling, 5'10", 190-pound junior, red dot player this week, someone that we have to key on in the pass game. He's a leading receiver by far in both receptions and yards. He has 19 catches, 191 yards, and 1 touchdown. And then the other key player I put down here, not a red dot player, but his wide receiver Bryson Green. He's the next closest player with 8 receptions for 89 yards.
Okay, interesting. Now, normally I would ask you, what do you expect from this offense, or what is their identity? Is that fair to ask this week, knowing that they have a different quarterback and they will for the rest of the year?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough because Van Dyke and Locke are both similar style of quarterbacks, right? Van Dyke's not a run-first type of quarterback, and he's not a dual threat. They're both pocket passers. They love to sit in the pocket. They do a fair share of zone read, though. You just don't see them pull a whole lot, right? They're going to read that defensive end. Now, they will to keep you honest, and they'll take off and run if they need to, or if it's an obvious defensive end crashes down and they can pull it and pick up a couple yards and slide, but their MO is not to go through progression and take off and run. They'll throw it away. They'll throw it at the feet. They'll find their check down. They'll be smart with the football and try to protect it instead of taking off and running, right? But overall, they want to run the football with their backs. That's why they have 3 very good running backs. They don't need the quarterbacks to be effective on the ground because of the stable of backs that they have in their backfield. Look, overall, they run the ball 58% of the time and they throw it 42% of the time, right? That's been their MO. In all 3 games this year, they've had over 40 carries in each of these 3 starts.
So in some ways, is this game kind of a redemption game, if you will, or is it the same blueprint as last week against Michigan?
Yeah, it is a little bit. I think that their offense is a lot more similar to our offense, to an air raid, to a spread type, just without the air raid factor to it. Because and I say that because air raid doesn't necessarily mean throw the football over the field, right? And Lincoln loves to throw the ball, but we have tried to incorporate that run game. But when I say air raid or spread type of offense, they're going to do a good amount of 4 wide. They're going to spread you out. They're going to take a tight end out and go 4 wide receivers and go empty a whole lot. They're going to try to spread your defense out, and that's when they really take advantage of the run game, is going 4 wide, putting their tight end in the slot outside and forcing you to remove a backer so that they can run to a 5-man box on the inside. It's not the Wisconsins that we've seen before of that triple tight end, power run game, bring a fullback in. It is now a more modern era spread or air raid type of offense, but there is a heavy run facet to it, right? And again, like I said, what does that look like? That's that zone read. That's that lateral. You're going to see a ton of guard tackle pulling. You're going to see the tight end come across the formation a lot, something that we've struggled with before. We've gotten it fixed this year, but things that we've struggled with is misdirection and players that have been on this team in the past. So we're going to have to be locked in this week with game planning in the run game to know we're going to see a lot of window dressing and pre-snap motion and guard tackle pulling. But we do that here at USC a lot, so that's something that can prepare us and something we can lean back on from the offseason.
Now, when I think of Wisconsin, and correct me if I'm wrong, I just think of beefy offensive linemen, or maybe beefy in the trenches in general. What do you see from who they have at their starting 5?
Yeah, their offensive line is interesting. They did lose some key players from a year ago. I think their 2 tackles are 2 of the most experienced tackles in the Big Ten. 2 very good players. Their center is a very good player, but overall, like you said, it's not the same Wisconsin beefy, corn-fed, blue-collar type of offensive lineman that we've seen in the past. And that's why I think they're kind of middle of the pack right now in the run game. Again, they have 3 very good running backs. Offensive line, they replaced some guys from a year ago that were key players, similar to Michigan, right? And we talked about that last week. They had an entirely new, starting 5 up front, but they still hurt us in the run game, right? So this is an experienced group, but it's not a group that, in my opinion, is one of the better offensive lines in the Big Ten. And I think Michigan, their offense line from a week ago is better than Wisconsin's, but that's not to say that they're not going to come out and be physical, be downhill. Now, they do run the football a lot more sideline to sideline. They like to get on the edge, right? They're not going to be as downhill power run game that we saw from Michigan. But again, they got some athletes up front that can get in space and work up to the second level and get to your linebacker, get to your safety, and break off some of those big plays downfield.
Now, when you say 3 running backs, that makes me think that they each provide something different to the game, because otherwise my brain goes, well, why would you have 3 or split the carries that much? Am I on the right track,
Yeah.
or are they similar?
From the small sample size I've seen from this year, to me, Malusi is their every down back, right? He is great at power run game. He can take off. He has a great burst of speed too, right? And he's patient. He's a very good running back, has great vision. He is their lead back, right? He's your every down back. Now, Cade Yakameli, in my opinion, is their power back. He comes in, he's a lot more physical, a downhill runner. He's not going to run a whole lot sideline to sideline, right? He's going to come downhill when they want to go smash mouth, when they get down on 3rd and 1, when they get down in the red zone or down at the goal line, expect Yakameli to be in there. And then Tawi Walker, I think, in my opinion, is a little bit more of their speed back, right? He's still big at 215, only 5'9", and he has that power element to him. But and you can see it on film, again, the number is not over 100 yards yet, only 26 carries, only averaging 3.5 yards per carry. But you see flashes of if he missed that one-arm tackle, or if he breaks free that last line of defense, you can see him take it the distance. That's why I say all three of these guys, and that's a good question, bring a different element, but they will use all three interchangeably. We'll see a good amount of all of them, but expect Malusi to be in there as the lead back.
Now, I know you're a film nerd, but I know that you especially dug into their game against Alabama. What did you glean from that film?
Yeah, I mean, the Western Michigan game was the first game of the year. They struggled, obviously, and you expect Western Michigan to be a little bit of a lesser opponent, but they gave them some troubles in that football game, especially early on. And then the following week, they played South Dakota, which they played well in that game. That's why I wanted to go back, and I had a separate section of notes for the Alabama game because, you're going to see a lot more, learn a lot more from a team when they play those high-end football teams, those top 5, top 10 opponents. You're going to learn a lot more. So going through the Alabama game, it really gave me more of an understanding of their offense, right? So in the pass game, and Locke came in that football game, so that made a lot more sense too to have that own section of notes in the Alabama game. Unfortunately, Van Dyke hurt himself pretty early on. I think it was the first drive of the game actually that he went out and they went down and scored a field goal, but it was Braden Locke for the rest of that football game. In the pass game, they don't push the ball down the field a whole lot, right? That's what surprised me is they do have some playmakers on the outside, and I think that's why they've struggled a little bit in the pass game is they like to be very conservative. Okay. And you're going to see a ton of sit routes over the football. You're going to see, and it's similar to us, but we do take a lot more shots. We've seen Deuce Robinson hit down the field. We've seen some go balls to Jacoby Lane. Yeah. We've seen a Miller Moss push the ball down the field. They're very conservative in their pass game, right? It's not a lot of big-time plays. It's not a lot of over-the-top throws. They did miss a couple against Alabama in the second half with Braden Locke. He had a corner out for a touchdown that he overthrew. But overall in the pass game, expect a lot of crossers, a lot of short throws, a lot of plays of the running back out of the backfield, and then some sit routes to the tight end over the football. Now, when you get to the run game against Alabama, they did a ton of motion, of pre-snap looks, and I've talked about it before, that's been their MO, but they love to use that tight end pulling across. They'll make it look like they're leaving the backside end unblocked, and then you have a tight end coming back and it's not a blindside block, but a block that maybe you're not ready for. Yeah. So if I'm Anthony Lucas, if I'm Jameel Muhammad this week, you may think I'm getting a free rush and I'm not reading the quarterback what's happening. Be ready for those block backs, right? Be ready for someone coming across. They do a great job in misdirection in the run game. It looks like they're going right, plant their foot in the ground, go back left with two pullers coming across. But again, I said it's very similar to our offense, which is going to help us a lot, right? It's not the Wisconsins that we're used to seeing. It's not that power duo run game where it's double teams up to, and they will do that, right? They'll get downhill, and especially when you get in those running situations on 3rd and short, on 4th and short, and again, they're not afraid to go for it on 4th down. If it's 4th and short, expect them to bring in those extra size, the beef up front, and run downhill. But when it's their base offense, when we're out and they have possession and 10 or 1st and 10 or 2nd and 10, 2nd and 5, where you can throw or pass, or you can run or pass, be ready for that zone read type of plays. And again, you don't have to be ready for the quarterback to take off, but you've got to be honest because they will pull it and hurt you when you're not expecting it.
What advantages come when a defense, or at least on the scouting report, an offense doesn't really go for the deep shot? Like, do you still need to make sure you're because they might keep you honest, or can you kind of key on certain things?
Yeah, I think too, and this isn't coming from Phil Longo. This isn't coming from within Wisconsin, but this is coming from, articles, from message boards, from comments. There has been some frustration of not having that element of explosiveness in the pass game on offense. So, is this going to be a week where Longo goes out and game plan and says, how can we take the top off the defense? How can we push the football down the field? Because they're obviously trying to sustain those long drives, and it's been hurting them a little bit. Now, they got away with it against Western Michigan and South Dakota, but and again, I know Braden Locke came in, and he's a younger player against Alabama, and he didn't prepare for that game, obviously as a starter. Yeah. So it's difficult to go out there and say, hey, let's just start throwing bombs all over the field and push the ball down the field. Yeah. But I think for them, a big key this week is going to be wanting to take more advantage of a vertical passing game, and we have to be ready for that. And kind of just the overview of Braden Locke or the scouting report on him is he is a gunslinger, right? He's not afraid to throw the football, and he's a very twitchy quarterback. What I mean by that is he's going to get the ball. You'll see him too, I promise. Watch the film or go watch him on Saturday. He's going to get it slow, and then he puts it back into the slot, right?
Okay.
We call it the slot or getting loaded. He like does this thing where he catches it, gets back quick, twitchy, but what happens with that and what affects him is that his feet are very loud. And what that means is your feet are not quiet in the pocket. They're not comfortable. They're not smooth. When you're a quarterback, you want to have a very relaxed demeanor in the backfield, right? When you're in the pocket, when you're going through progression, when you have loud feet, it means you're constantly, and I obviously can't see my feet, so I'm going to use my hands, but you're constantly moving around. And what happens is your back foot's not in the ground, it's not loaded, and that makes you late on your throws. You want to be in rhythm to where it's eyes before feet, right? I see progression 1, step up, progression 2, step up, progression 3. With Locke, and this is a younger quarterback, right? He's inexperienced. He'll get more comfortable as he goes on, but you see him going 1, 2, 4, maybe back to 3, where he's constantly moving around, and that hurt him against Alabama, right? They got home, got some sack fumbles, which came from those loud feet, right? Or quick feet, or not being comfortable in the pocket. Some of the best to do it are Tom Brady, are Aaron Rodgers, right? You can see there's times when Tom Brady is completely stand still in the pocket before he steps up to his next progression. Now, younger quarterbacks at home, I'm not advocating for completely stopping in the pocket like Brady does, and he's one of the best to ever do it. But you want to have a little bit of active feet, but they need to be quiet. They need to be comfortable as you go through progression. And with Locke, he gets a little bit quick and twitchy, and that forces him to get out of rhythm and force some of these throws, or he's late to some of these throws. But we've got to be ready to take advantage of an inexperienced quarterback this week going against Wisconsin's offense.
Okay, so just so I'm clear, that like loud feet issue, is that bad technique or nerves?
I think it's more of nerves. It's performance anxiety.
Got it. Okay.
Because you can tell too, there's times, especially in quick game, and again, he does the catch and quick into the slot, right, which is very twitchy, but that's just his play style. But you can tell there's times when he tries to slow it down a little bit, but then when the play starts breaking down or the first read isn't there and he gets the second or 3, then his feet start turning, he's looking everywhere, gets a little uncomfortable, and then he misses, right? And again, he only has a 50% completion percentage. A big part of that is because of his feet, right? Accuracy, majority of the time, comes from your base, comes from the ground up, right? It comes from that ground force to where I'm loaded, everything's in line, I can stay in rhythm and then deliver the football with any arm angle that I need to. If your feet are all over the place, then the football is going to go haywire and you're going to be off on your accuracy.
So overall, based on what we just talked about, if you're defensive coordinator D'Anton Lynn, how do you scheme for this game?
I think the most important thing this week is going to be stop the run, right? And obviously Wisconsin and Longo from a week ago and Luke Fickell, they were watching the game film. They understood that we gave up 290 yards rushing. Now, it looked great for majority of the game, but we did have some holes in the defense, and we're a little bit late to some of our gaps and lost gap integrity and got moved around a little bit. They're going to want to establish the run, right? They saw a football team beat us last week being one-dimensional. Now, I do expect Wisconsin to throw the football a lot more than Michigan did, right? But I don't think it's going to be as aggressive through the air as maybe they had when or they were when Tyler Van Dyke was in there, right?
Yeah.
So expect them to throw the football, and they love to lull you to sleep in the run game. It's kind of like, the opposite of us, right? Where we throw the football around, then we'll kind of surprise you with a run. Maybe when we're rolling, they're the opposite. They're going to run zone read, guard tackle pull, run it, and then they're going to sell a play action, set up those 3 or 4 plays in a row, and then try to push the football down the field. Now, again, they don't take those deep shots, but they'll hit a crosser, they'll hit an over route, they'll hit a stop route over the football. And then the second and most important thing for this football game is we have to tackle, right? And it sounds so simple, right? Just tackle, wrap up.
Yeah.
But we have to eliminate those explosive plays. I don't care who we were playing this week, right? It has to get fixed from a week ago, because we can talk about outside of those 3 big run plays, they only had 133 yards, right? But even with those big run plays, if we wrap up on the second or third opportunity, those 70, 60, 50-yard runs are only 15-yard runs. And I'm okay with that. I know 10 yards plus is an explosive play for D'Anton Lynn, but Wisconsin this week has running backs that are capable of running you over. They can run through you, they can run around you, and they can take it the distance, right? They can do all 3, especially Malusi, their starter. So we have to make it a point of emphasis to get back to what we were doing the first 2 weeks, rally to the football. I want to see 5, 6, 7 Cardinal jerseys around the football every single play. Make sure we wrap up and get to them to the ground and eliminate those explosive plays.
You just alluded to it, but do you feel like the rallying to the ball element wasn't there as much as we saw in the first 2 games against Michigan?
Yeah, and I think a big part of that was, and you've got to give credit where credit is due, Michigan did a great job of being physical in the run game, right? We saw a lot of times guys getting pushed off the football, and I think we did a good job of getting a surge up front. It's not like it was bully ball to where we were constantly getting blown off the football. There were times, though, especially on some of the big plays that we were losing gap integrity because we were losing our one-on-one blocks or because the double team what was too easy to get up to the second level. So that's a big factor into it. But overall, I think when you play Michigan and you have a running quarterback, that gives people other responsibilities, right? They can't all just focus in on the running back, on the run game. Now you have a safety that has to be responsible for Alex Orji pulling the football, who could have been in the, been inside and helped on the running back. This week with Wisconsin, like I said, they'll pull the football if they need to. Braden Locke will take it and run to keep you honest, but that's not what he wants to do, right? They want to get the football to their running backs so we can have a little bit more responsibility or key on their backs more than we have to worry about a running quarterback, right? So that's a big part of it. But overall, we just have to be physical and win at the point of attack. And again, this is Big Ten football. It's what we signed up for. This is what we want. We have to be dominant and be able to control the trenches.
Already, any other thoughts on Wisconsin's offense?
No, I'm good. I'm excited. I'm ready to go. Again, I'm a football nerd. I can't wait to see what Longo's going to do with 2 weeks to prepare. Again, a very well-respected offensive coordinator, and I can't wait to see what Dan Lynn's going to do after last week's performance and bounce back and continue to make those adjustments.
Alrighty, let's look at Wisconsin's defense. Before we do, just want to give a thanks to Audi. What you expect from an SUV is a range of sizes to fit your lifestyle. Expectations matter, but exceeding them matters more. The Audi family of SUVs, progress you can feel. And Trojan fans, celebrate every USC win and enjoy the sweet taste of victory with a free donut at Ralph's the day after the win. Download your digital coupon from the Ralph's app to score your free donut at any Los Angeles area Ralph's store. Alrighty, Cody, like I said, it's time for Wisconsin's defense. What do you see from them?
Yeah, we'll start with their stats and their numbers. Again, a struggling defense, not something that we're used to seeing under Mike Tressel when he was at Cincinnati. But the numbers don't really tell the whole story, and I'll get into that in a second. But total defense, they're 301 yards per game, which is 41st in college football. Where they excel right now, where they're doing a very good job, is in pass defense right now. Alabama, we'll get into those notes, exposed them a little bit, and they gave up some big-time plays. But before that, they did a good job in the secondary and coverage. They're only giving up 160 yards per game, which is 29th in college football. Run defense, though, they are struggling, 141 yards per game, which is 78th in college football. And again, those numbers are a lot higher because of the Alabama game, right? And we'll explain kind of how to beat them in a second or what we need to take advantage of when it comes to running the football. They're giving up over 5 yards per carry on the ground, almost 6. I think it's 5.8 or 5.7. So they are struggling in stopping the run. They're giving up a first down every 2 run plays. That can't happen, so we need to take advantage of that. Scoring defense right around average, 23 points per game, which is 69th in college football. And then third down defense, they have 37% conversion rate from their opponents, which is 68th in college football.
Now, as far as key players, who you got for this week?
Yeah, I got 3 red dot players this week for Wisconsin. Now, they're one of those defenses, and we have it a little bit here at USC where it's more of a collective group effort, right? They don't really have a lot of guys that stand out or that are dominant so far this season, right? They've got some good players on that defense, don't get me wrong, but this is the type of scheme to where it's important to trust your teammate, right? Everybody has to be doing their own job, and you have to do your own job to know that the other 10 around you are going to be right there to make the play. And they struggle with that a little bit, but they do have some standout players. And the first one I have, and probably their best player on defense, is safety Hunter Waller, 6'2", 220-pound senior, leads the team with 17 tackles. He is the definition of a tackling machine. Very good football player, always around the football. And I'm serious. If you watch the film, you will always see Waller in the run game and the pass game. He's always around the football. Had 120 tackles in 2023. Yeah, so he is a tackling machine. The next red dot player is their linebacker, Jaheim Thomas, 6'4", 245-pound senior. Now, pay attention to all these sizes, too. This is a very big physical defense, and I'll kind of get into that in a minute about how we can take advantage of that.
Yeah.
But they have a lot of size up front, especially in the front 7. Thomas has 16 tackles. He transferred from Cincinnati under Fickle, so he's a little bit of a Kamari Ramsey, right? A little bit of a Humphrey who's played for their coach before, and Luke Fickle is a defensive coach, right? A defensive-minded coach, so he understands what to do in this scheme. That's why he's, again, it was only his first year at Wisconsin, but he could pick it up very quickly, and why I have him as a red dot player. He's a veteran player, been playing college football for a long time now. Now, some of the other players to keep an eye on is linebacker Jake Chaney, 5'11", 233-pound senior. He has 10 tackles on the year. Another linebacker is Leon Lowry Jr., 6'3", 250-pound senior. So, again, a lot of size on this front 7. He has 11 tackles and 1 sack. Now, their defensive tackle, I think they have 2 very good players up front, but I think their best defensive tackle is Ben Barton, 6'5", 310-pound senior. He will be on Jonah Monheim the entire game. He will be on Alani Noah up front, right? We're going to see him against Emmanuel Pregnon, so that's going to be a huge task for this interior of USC's offensive line. He's got 6 tackles in a year, but again, a guy that's not going to jump off the stat sheet, but he does a good job of getting penetration. Now, another linebacker who I think is probably one of their better pass rushers, and it's going to be big for our tackles this week. He has a 23% win rate when coming off the edge. A very good pass rusher in John Pius, 6'4", 250-pound senior. He only has 2 tackles, but again, he's so close to getting home. It's kind of like Anthony Lucas, right? He's getting there. He's forcing the ball out quick for the opposing team, but not quite getting it done or getting sacks on the sack sheet. Now, my third red dot player, and by far their best cover player in this secondary, is cornerback Ricardo Hallman, 5'10", 185-pound junior, has 5 tackles and 1 pass defense so far this year. He is the definition of a ball hawk, and why I say that is because he led the entire country last year in 2023 with 7 interceptions.
Wow.
And that is very high-level college football, right? He was tied for first, right? I think he was tied with I think Watts was who he's tied with from Notre Dame, right? So someone correct me if I'm wrong, but he was tied with someone from Notre Dame, one of their defensive backs, but he is a very instinctive player. If you're off by a little bit with your accuracy, if you leave the football a little bit inside on an out-breaking route or a little bit outside when they're breaking in, he will go get it, right? Or he'll at least get a hand on the football, so we've got to be ready for that. Not quite to the level of Will Johnson from last week, so he's not that type of player to where you have to throw away from him the entire game. But if I'm Miller Moss and if I'm going Hallman's way, you just have to be a little bit better in accuracy, when targeting those guys when he's in coverage. And then their other corner is a very good player too, a lot more physical than Hallman, but his name is Nazir Forquarian. I hope I said that correct. I listened to the audio tape, so I hope I pronounced that correct. He's a 6'1", 190-pound senior, very experienced football player, has 11 tackles, like I just mentioned, a very physical corner at 6'1", and he's solid in coverage, right? He's not as good of a cover player as Hallman. I think we can take more of an advantage against Nazir in the pass game, but he is one of those players that'll come downhill. He's an extra asset in the run game that can make those tackles. It can be physical on the outside. And then the last player I have, I mentioned Alex Grinch, obviously, so I've got to mention this player, linebacker Tackett Curtis. He's a 6'2", 230-pound sophomore. He is a rotational player for him. He did play a good amount against Alabama, though, so are they going to start him this week? Is he going to play more because he's familiar with this offense? They need a little bit of a spark in the run game. They've been struggling stopping the run, but again, he has 10 tackles on the year, and he is a transfer player from USC from a year ago.
Now, when it comes to Hallman, just from your experience as a quarterback, when you have a ball hawk like him and you're going against it, how does that affect you mentally?
You know where he's at on the field, right? It's the same thing last week with Will Johnson, right? Who's just phenomenal in coverage. Hallman this year doesn't have any picks yet, but again, 1 pass defense. He's always around the football, and I think a big part of him not having any interceptions is because the teams that they played against have thrown away from him, right? They know how lethal he can be on the defensive side of the football, how he can affect your game plan and make some plays on the ball. Great ball skills too, right? It's very rare to see a defensive player who can make some of those tough catches, and he does a good job of that when you watch his film from a year ago. But yeah, you hate to say, you don't want to give him too much respect, right? You want to respect your opponent. You want to respect those red dot players, those game plan changing players, but you don't want to give them too much respect, but you also have to know that it's okay to throw away from them, right? It's okay. And I know it hurt us last week, right? In that pick 6 against Michigan targeting Will Johnson. And I know Zachariah Branch fell off a little bit, and that kind of affected that play. And he could have helped out Miller, maybe knocked it down and just turned it into an incompletion instead of a pick 6. But there's no shame in throwing away from him. Now, Nazir on the opposite side is a good corner, but I think he struggles a little bit more in coverage. I think we could take advantage of that. But overall, we need to go out, and I want to see us push the football down the field. We'll talk about that in my keys to the game. We'll talk about that kind of overall in a second. But we just need to go out there with no fear in the pass game. And obviously, offensive line has to do a great job in protection. Yeah. But even if we are going against Hallman and we're targeting Hallman, he's only 5'10", right? It's okay. Throw it up to Deuce Robinson. Throw it up to Jacoby Lane. Force him this week to have to go make a play on the football. Show that he can do it. And if he is doing it and getting the job done, if he does have an interception early or he's knocking the football down or doing a good job in coverage, then let's work away from him. But overall, if I'm Miller Moss, know where he's at. But again, you can still be aggressive and throw his way.
Now, you mentioned the size in some of these players on defense. How does that affect what they do or can do on defense?
Yeah, this is a 3-4 defense, right? Their bread and butter is their front 7, right? And again, obviously their passing defense has been a lot better. Now, Alabama exposed that a little bit. There was a lot of free receivers running wide open down the field, right? Okay. A lot of coverage busts on this back end, and that's something that we can take advantage of, especially when we have a lot of pre-snap movement. But yeah, their MO is they want to out-physical you on the defensive side of the football. They want to control the line of scrimmage, which they've struggled with, and I think that's why they struggled against Alabama, especially on defense. Obviously Van Dyke goes out, but their defense still struggled. That didn't affect them on the defensive side of the ball because they were getting overpowered by Alabama. But on top of that, they struggle with speed. And that's one of the biggest things for me this week is we have to take advantage of working sideline to sideline, right? I don't want it to be a game where and again, I understand the mentality of we're in the Big Ten. Let's be dominant. Let's show that we belong here. Let's show that we can be a power run game. But that's not our MO. That's not where we excel on the offensive side of the football. And we started seeing that in the second half with Lincoln Riley. But I would like for us to come out this week and understand, hey, they're going to put a lot of big players in the middle of this team. They're going to go 3-4. They're going to go when it's nickel. They're going to go a 2-4-5 or a 4-2-5, however way you want to mix it up. They're going to put a lot of pride in their front seven and being big physical defensive players. But they do struggle when you have speed working sideline to sideline. Jalen Milroe was running free all night long, right? And especially in zone read. This is a week where I would like to see Miller maybe pull it a little bit. Now protect yourself, slide if you have to, get down, but this is going to be a week where they miss a little bit in those zone read options where the DN will crash, and you can pull, as a quarterback, pull it and hurt you in the run game, and that can be another asset in the run game, right? We struggled getting the run game going last week. When you are Miller Moss, I'm not saying he has to pull it and run for 100 yards this game, but I wouldn't mind seeing him pull the football or bring in Jaden, right? Let Jaden Maiava come in and maybe have a package for Jaden this week to where, because if you watch the Alabama tape, again, like I said, and this was the original question was their size that they have, right? They do a good job of that. It's tough to move them off the spot. But why they've struggled in the run game, like I said, is because Alabama works sideline to sideline. And their quarterback, Jalen Milroe, had a field day in the run game. I mean, it's speed kills. And when you have a defense like Wisconsin who prides themselves in being physical and being big, and I just told you they have 250, 275, 310, 225, 245, all the way across at their linebacker core. Tackett Curtis at 230 is the smallest player they have at linebacker. When you have a team that prides themselves in being physical, you have to get the ball to the outside. So, again, I'm not saying it's going to happen. I mean, it'll be interesting to see, but I would not be surprised if we do have another element this week, like last year with Michigan, right? When they had J.J. McCarthy was a starter, but they had an Alex Orji package.
Yeah.
Maybe we have a Jaden package this week to where he comes in. It just, go watch, if you go watch the highlights. You don't have to watch the full film. Go watch the highlights if you're listening at home, if you want to watch a little film of the Alabama-Wisconsin game. Watch how many times Jalen Milroe pulls the football because the DN crashes, and I think he had 3 rushing touchdowns or 2 rushing touchdowns in that game that were easy walk-in touchdowns because they were losing outside contain in the run game to the quarterback.
Given some of the struggles we saw offensively from this team on Saturday, how much are they itching to maybe get back in the Coliseum, get back to what they do well, and start fast in that sense?
Yeah, and I think we asked Lincoln probably 3 different versions of this question on Trojans Live the other night, and I talked about, wanting to get into your game plan, but being backed up consistently in the first half, and 3 of the first half drives started within our own 15-yard line. 2 of them were within our own 7-yard line,
which is
right?
absurd.
So and he mentioned that's in their student section, the louder part of the field. So, but he followed it right up, after that, saying, like, that's not an excuse, though. We've got to be aggressive. We've got to find a way to get into a rhythm. We missed a couple drops there early on. We missed a couple plays, a couple blocking assignments that could have been plays, and those are those woulda, coulda, shouldas that we talked about. But this week is our chance to get back to our identity. And what I think that is on offense is starting fast, playing fast. I just talked about it. Use our speed to our advantage. We have Deuce Robinson on the outside. We have Zachariah Branch. We have Jacoby Lane. We have Woody Marks out of the backfield. Quentin Joyner, the list just goes on and on. Kyron Hudson, Kyle Ford. I'd like to see him used a little bit more this week, right? Maybe even as a tight end position.
Ooh.
Putting his size over there, or Deuce Robinson, put him in the slot or the inside of a 3-by-1 and let him be that tight end. Not attached to the end of the line of scrimmage, but, find different ways to get our pass game going again early. And then if we do bring in a Jaden package, or if Miller does, I'm not losing faith in that. Let Miller pull one and pick up a 15-yarder just to keep them honest in the run game and get Woody Marks on the edge. We just have to start fast. We cannot be conservative as we were a week ago, but a big part of that, again, is being backed up, not wanting to have silly turnovers early in that game, get the crowd involved, but we're home now. We're back home. We're at the Coliseum. The Collie's going to be rocking. I hope the crowd's going crazy. We can control the pace of the football game on offense. We can help stop them on defense and get into a rhythm this week that we really didn't get to the entire first half, besides maybe that last drive, which still only ended in 3 points, right? Besides that, it never really felt like the offense got going. We have to be able to get back to that early this week. And if we do, then we play our brand of football and we force Wisconsin to try to keep up.
Now, obviously, I'm following along your notes as we talk about this, and I happen to see the word funky in them.
Yeah, third down.
Where does funky play with Wisconsin's defense?
Yeah, so before I get to the funky part, I'll just talk about them as a pressure defense overall on base downs, because third down they will bring some pressure, but whether it's base or third down, they like to bring interior pressure. What I mean by that is when you have a 3-4 defense, they like to bring those 2 inside linebackers, and they like to drop. When they do that, they'll drop out those outside stand-up rushers. They'll drop out their Braylon Shelbys. They'll drop out their Anthony Lucases into coverage. Very rarely do they bring more than 4 or 5 in pressure, right? You're not going to see a lot of 6, 7-man pressures like Michigan did, like Danton Lynn likes to do at time, especially in got-to-have-it situations. When it gets to third down, you will see, and that's where this comes into play, some funky looks, right? But it's not as exotic or as funky as a Wink Martindale, as a Danton Lynn, right? It'll be a 3-down front, maybe creep up those 2 linebackers, but it's not going to be an overload, multiple looks. Now, again, they may go off of what Michigan did a week ago and maybe add in some of those and try to confuse us on third down. But overall, it's not going to be as funky, as we say here on the Victory Pod, as we saw from Michigan last week. But you have to be ready for communication, right? And we're at home, again, so that's going to help. But they will show you some double linebacker walked up looks, in the A gap, in the B gap. They're going to not overload, but they'll maybe put out a linebacker on the edge that you're not used to seeing in their base 3-4 front or their 2-4-5. But you just have to be ready for identification, right? It's not going to be difficult, and Miller and Jonah are doing a great job. Now their 4th game together. We're back home, so I expect them to get that picked up and figured out this week. But the biggest thing for me and why I say in my notes, they don't bring a lot of 4 or 5-man pressure. They don't bring more than 4 or 5 men. I'm just hesitant to believe that this week because our offensive line struggles, right? So that's why you can kind of hear it in my voice. I'm a little iffy of, are they going to continue to do that against like they did against Alabama, where they had some big plays hit against them trying to bring pressure and they would drop, 7 or 8 into coverage at times? Or is this going to be, we're going to play man-to-man like Michigan did, or play a little bit more closer to the line of scrimmage and be physical and bring pressure and bring guys off the edge and force your tackles if Tobias is in there this week, or if Elijah Page is back, or if Mason moves sides? Are they going to try to get after us on the outside of the edge and not stick to what they do? And they will bring some safety pressure, right? They brought Waller, I think, one time against Michigan. I didn't see a cornerback pressure blitz, but you have to be, as a running back, expect for a single safety pressure. But overall, like I said, not as funky as we've seen from Martindale and Lynn before in the past, but now they have some tape off of us from a week ago and our offensive line struggling. Will they amp it up a little bit this week? I mean, we'll see. Only time will tell.
On that note of the offensive line, we had multiple questions. SoCal Manny, No Cheese, Abro, and Peter, they all wanted to know, do you think we see the first half offensive line that we saw against Michigan or the second half offensive line come Saturday?
I don't know. I mean, the easy answer is the second half, because that's when I felt like we had a lot more production on offense. Not even felt like, that's what the tape showed, right? We did have a lot more production. Now, Tobias Raymond struggled at times, and he's a freshman in that environment. It's going to be tough. But I was proud of some of the reps he had. When you watch it, he had some one-on-one blocks with Josiah Stewart. He had some one-on-one blocks with their edge rushers. He did a good job, right? He showed you flashes of why this coaching staff has been excited about him in the offseason and the strides that he's taken. But then you move Mason Murphy over to left tackle. That's also difficult, right? Going from the right side to the left side. He did some things well, but he did struggle, right? And I think a problem or part of that, I'll say this, he struggled more on the left than he did the right, because when you flip sides mid-game, it's difficult.
Yeah.
But the reason I think we stick with the second offensive line, and Lincoln did say Elijah Page had some cramping issues. He had some other outside factors that affected his play on Saturday.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I know some fans have been frustrated, nowhere near giving up on Elijah Page. I think he's going to be a phenomenal football player. That's going to be the toughest test he's had as a starter yet, right? People
and that
have to understand.
also was his 4th start in his collegiate career.
There's multiple times where it's not, it's on him, but it's not on him, because there's multiple times where he is a second late getting off the football because he can't hear the snap count, because he can't see the ball, because you're trying to, as a tackle, look over at the ball, but also see where Stewart's adjusting or where their defensive ends are adjusting, or if they're bringing a safety or linebacker pressure, and then you miss the ball, and by that time you're late. And when you're late against that good of a defensive line, it's going to be a long night. And we saw that, and it was tough on him. So, again, I'm not giving up on Page, but I do think going into this game, to keep some momentum and build some of that continuity, you have to at least try or start with. Now, if we rotate some guys, fine. I want us to find that solid 5, but I think you start with Mason Murphy at left tackle and let Tobias Raymond get a full week of preparation to get to start at right tackle.
Now, each week we've talked about this topic, but I'm going to bring it up again just because of how unique, the chess match we talked about at the top between Grinch and Riley. Obviously, these two are very comfortable with each other. They know each other's schemes and their tendencies. Do we see Lincoln Riley bring out some things we haven't seen before, because this is the time to do it?
Yeah, I do. I think we're going to see Lincoln at least have some gadget or trick plays this week that we haven't seen before, right? And I'm excited about that. You always get excited as a quarterback or as an offensive-minded former player to see kind of what game planning things that Lincoln Riley will come up with. And again, I think he's one of the best play callers in all of college football. But you have to take into account that Alex Grinch has spent so much time with you in the offseason and in preparation. And he's seen there's times when you run trick plays over and over. And I actually just got a little salty thinking about it. We used to run a pitch to the running back and then a throwback to me that we practiced every single week for like a year and a half, and we never ran it in a game. So a little frustrated there, but I say that for an example of there's times that we haven't seen plays on Saturday that they ran in spring ball, in fall camp that Grinch has seen. So Lincoln has to go back and remember all of that, right? Like, okay, Grinch has seen this double pass that we've had before that I haven't shown on Saturdays, or, he's seen this end around or reverse to Zachariah, throwback to Miller's screen, or whatever it may be that he's seen before. Now, we're not going to make a living off of trick plays on Saturday, but those are plays that are so important. And we saw one against Michigan. We tried to have Kyron Hudson with a double pass. Those are plays that if they don't work, fine, protect the football, throw it away. But if they do, those can be game-changing plays or spark plays that maybe we're not getting into a rhythm that can get this team going. But overall, this is, again, going to be the ultimate chess match between Alex Grinch and Lincoln Riley. And I know Mike Tressel is a defensive coordinator and Alex Grinch is co-DC, but I guarantee you Grinch is in every single meeting this week. He's listed as a safeties coach, but I guarantee you he's in the cornerback meetings. He's going to spend some time in the linebacker meetings. He's going to spend some time in the defensive line meetings. He's going to take over some of those unit meetings instead of Tressel being up there, because when you spend that much amount of time with someone, you know all their little ins and outs and what they like to do, because you play more against your team in spring ball and fall camp than you do opposing teams on Saturday. I mean, you show them your game plan, how you process game plans, what you think going against this type of defense. So it's going to be huge. But again, I can't wait to watch it. I know it's Tressel versus Riley, but at the end of the day, it really is a little bit of Riley versus Grinch.
Now, we did hear some encouraging news from head coach Lincoln Riley after Tuesday's practice. He gave an update on tight end Lake McCree. It was not a season-ending injury for the tight end, but he will be out several weeks for USC. He was the leading receiver heading into Michigan. Do you think that, we talked about the Miller to Lake connection. Does that extend to the entire position room, or do you foresee maybe the tight end usage decreasing a little bit because you don't have that veteran player there?
Yeah, I mean, first off, it's great news to hear that he is going to come back this year. And obviously we saw him rehab a knee injury from a year ago. So we know if there's anyone that can get back and be ready to play, it's Lake McCree. So that's great news to hear. But I do think there's a positive, or I guess one of the only positives in losing Lake is that Cade Eldridge has played a good amount this year, right? And he has some experience. He had a big-time catch against LSU. We saw a lot of 12 personnel this year, and especially against Utah State. And what 12 personnel is one running back, two tight ends, and two receivers. And Cade Eldridge is always that tight end too coming into the football game. But the biggest question mark for me is who is that third tight end now to step up? Or I guess now technically tight end 2, because Cade will be the starter. Is it Walker Lyons, who we saw a little bit against Utah State, had a couple catches, and then he played last week? And some of those big-time moments against Michigan, are we going to see Joey Olsen? Are we going to see some of those other guys kind of come in and step up? But for the time being right now, it's going to be, in my opinion, Cade Eldridge will be the guy, and then you have Walker Lyons be the next in line. But do we, like I mentioned a couple minutes ago, move some other guys into that position, right? And not saying they're going to be a tight end with the hand in the dirt and pulling around the end of the line of scrimmage and blocking, but do you put a Kyle Ford at a slot position to where he's extended, or an extended tight end, not with his hand in the dirt, but he stood up in a 2-point stance and he can be used as a tight end on some of our concepts? Do you put Deuce Robinson in there, who has some experience as a tight end in high school? Fun. Just when you have that type of size, yeah, it's a great advantage to have on the outside, but then when you move them to the inside against some of these linebackers that are going to struggle a little bit in coverage, and then are they going to look at us on defense when you have Kyle Ford as a tight end type? Are they going to look at it as a nickel defense, or are they going to go into a base defense because they're treating him as a tight end? So I think there's multiple things we can do to fill that void right now for Lake McCree. But like you said, he's definitely going to be missed. It's going to be very hard to replace that production. And then another guy who's going to be missed in the pass game is Mekhi Lemon, who
Good point.
Very scary injury last Saturday, but we saw some updates from Coach Riley that he's back around the football team. He's doing better, so can't wait to get him back as well. But two guys that are going to be hard to replace. But that just means some of these younger guys or players that haven't had a whole lot of experience are going to have to step up this week.
Okay, Cody, I know you have a lot of notes, so any other thoughts about Wisconsin's defense before we move on?
Yeah, just a couple final notes before we move on. And like you said, I watch a ton of film, take a ton of notes, so I've got to empty my notebook, make sure I get it all out there, because on the drive home, I'll be frustrated that I didn't say these final points. But I think one of the biggest ones is going to be that Wisconsin struggles covering the running back out of the backfield, right? And we have one of, if not the best pass-catching running backs in college football in Woody Marks. Go back and watch Western Michigan. They struggled on a couple check down plays at the back. They gave up a wheel route that I think went for around 30 yards and they struggle with communication on who's covering the back out of the backfield. So we need to get Woody Marks going not only in the run game but in the pass game as well. Be ready for twists and stunts up front. Now, I mentioned they only bring 4 or 5 man pressure, but when they do just rush 4 and just bring the interior defensive line, they will use some tackle and defensive end twist game. They will use some stunts on the other side to try to knock you off blocks. So be ready for that. Communication is going to be huge up front. And then another thing that they struggle with, and we struggle with from USC a year ago, right? And I know Tressel's a defensive coordinator, but they do have Grinch, so they are running a lot of that same scheme, especially in the secondary. They struggle with pre-snap movement, right? There's a couple times against Alabama where they have a fly motion coming across a formation, then they have a seam route, and there's no one within 20 yards of them. Guys just are not doing a good job of communicating on the fly, and then before they can figure it out, the ball snaps. So I think we need to do a lot of fly motion with Zachariah. Let Cade Eldridge come across formation, do a lot of pre-snap movement, not too much to where we're not playing fast, but definitely force them to communicate either rock and roll safeties or run across formation. That'll give you a good tell of man in their zone, right? And they've struggled with that. But my final point, and we've talked about it a little bit, but this is a game, and again, we're getting to the cues of the game in a second, so I'm probably going to sound repetitive, but that goes up on the USC Athletics website, so bear with me here. But my final point, and I think the way we win this football game or take advantage on offense, is we beat them with speed, right? Like I said, they are doing a great job of having those big physical guys up front, especially in their front 7, but they struggle with speed. Alabama took advantage of this all game long. You could tell that's where the difference in this ball game was Alabama had playmakers on the outside of pushing the ball down the field, which we haven't done a whole lot this year. Let's take advantage of that. Alabama did a great job with the quarterback running. Or even if we don't have a Jaden Packers or Miller doesn't pull it, let Woody Marks run sideline to sideline. Let him get outside on the edge, right? So I think that's so important this week is speed, 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 right? That's what we have here at USC. That's what we recruit for. We have playmakers all over the field. Let's take advantage of that, get them the ball in space, and force Wisconsin to try to keep up on defense.
Well, you just mentioned it, Cody. It's time for the USC Pharmacy prescription to win the keys to the game for USC against Wisconsin. First up, handle adversity.
Yeah, this is a huge opportunity for this team to come out and show how they're going to respond after last week's heartbreaking loss. Look, all of our goals are still right in front of us for this season, and we're going to see the type of leadership and culture that this team has. But I truly believe that we're going to learn more about this football team in this game on Saturday than we have the first 3 weeks combined.
Now the second key to the game, utilize speed on offense.
Yeah, I think this is a huge area that we need to take advantage of on the offensive side of the football. Wisconsin's front 7 is a very big and physical group that likes to play downhill, but they have struggled in recent weeks with speed and playing sideline to sideline, especially against Alabama. I would love to see us make it a point of emphasis to get our playmakers the ball in space and really push the ball down the field this week and get behind the secondary in the pass game.
Now the third key to the game, limit the big plays on defense.
Yeah, we did a great job for the majority of the game stopping the run a week ago, especially in the second half. But we have to be able to limit those explosive plays on the ground, specifically in those big-time moments with the game on the line. Wisconsin is another team this week that likes to lean heavy on the run game, and they have a solid group of running backs that can break free for some big-time plays. We have to play extremely physical up front and control the line of scrimmage from opening kickoff to the final whistle.
Alrighty, let's get to some questions. Before we do, just want to give a thanks to Audi. Focus matters. Listen closely. The Audi Q8 e-tron's cabin is serenely quiet, so you can focus on other things like having tomorrow's technology today. The new fully electric Audi Q8 e-tron, how we get there matters. And at Ralph's, everyone wins when it comes to saving big because when you order online through the Ralph's app, you get the same great prices, deals, and rewards on pickup or delivery that you do in store. So no matter how you shop, you always save big at Ralph's. Ralph's, fresh for everyone. Cody Kessler.
Fight on. That was a great switch, Emily. I could see it in the window.
She does a great job of just
I know.
Bam.
I love that
she
part.
Nails that.
I feel like a kid too. I'm like, fight on. TV production. This looks great.
Yeah, great job.
Yeah.
PSA, I am sorry if you didn't see the question box or tweet for questions. I forgot to do it on Tuesday, and then I tweeted out at like 8 a.m. on Wednesday. But we did get a good amount of questions. So if there's a particular time that your heart is set on receiving the tweet, please let me know. I just usually do it like right before practice or after practice on Tuesday. Whatever. Feedback, give it to me if you feel like it. Anyway.
I'm glad you said it because I didn't have to blame you today. Which I kind of just did right there anyways. But yeah, question time. Here we go.
For sure. OG commenter Joe Osorio said, question for OC Cody. Do you think it would be beneficial to implement a few more under center formations to alleviate the pressure on the O-line, i.e. play action rollouts, 12 personnel, etc.? I know we've seen those formations a few times in the past out of the gun.
Yeah, and that's a great question, Joe. I'm not opposed to that, right? I mean, obviously our MO on offense is from the gun, right? And that's what this air raid spread offense is. But I would not mind to keep teams honest and to force them to struggle a little bit with, preparation in the week and knowing that we have an extra layer to this offense of getting under center, especially on the third and short situations or on goal line situations, adding a package in that is under center. I don't think, and quote me if I'm wrong here, and someone fact check me, but going back, I don't think we've ran one play under center this year. I mean, we had to have, right? I'm putting us on the spot.
I feel like LSU, maybe?
Maybe we have. I'd have to go back and watch the film again. But it's got to be at least on a handful of times if we have. But I'm with Joe on that. Yeah, I think that does give a defense an extra element to prepare for. But I think the best time that we can use it is in short yardage situations, right? 3rd and 1 or 3rd and 3 and less, or 4th and got to have it situations down at the goal line, or 4th and 1. To where we can, have a power run style with 2 tight ends or even 3 tight ends in the game now. And then on top of that, add in a little bit of play action, right? Add in the John Gruden, spider 2 Y banana that you run from under center. That's the play action to the right.
I love screaming that randomly.
The F in the flat, the Y on the banana route. So we could add in an extra element to that. So, Joe, I'm not opposed to it, but I just don't know if we can get there. But again, I wouldn't mind seeing that or having a package that we have under center, especially in those short yardage situations.
Rama said, what changes do you expect Coach Riley to make to improve on offensive play calling if that's even needed?
Yeah, Coach Riley's talked about this a little bit throughout the week, and we talked about it on Trojans Live about, being a little bit better in some of those situations or some of those scenarios in the game. But I think the biggest thing for us is just starting fast, right? Get back to that aggressive style of play calling that we're used to seeing here at USC, of being a team that doesn't let their foot off the gas, right? That gets up early, that has those explosive plays early on, both in the run game and in the pass game, right? Now, I want to see a little bit more heavy pass this week, and I know that Wisconsin, statistically, by the numbers, does better in the pass game than they do the run game. But when they played Alabama, when they played an opponent that's very good, that has playmakers on the outside, they struggled. There were guys running wide open all game long. Jalen Milroe was picking them apart throughout their secondary, had some big-time throws down in the red zone as well. So I want to see us start fast, get Miller Moss going early, and then we can implement a little bit of run game and keep them honest. And I'm not saying go out there and throw the ball 70 times, and we still got to be balanced, but I'd love for us to come out and make it a point of emphasis to be aggressive this football game and put the ball in Miller Moss's hands early.
Now, we got specific questions from Connor and Blake wondering what does it actually look like when you are starting fast in this USC offense?
Yeah, I think there's multiple ways to do that, but the biggest one for me this week is I want to see us take some more shots down the field, right? And I know we have to be able to hold up in protection, and Wisconsin, saw that on film a week ago. They're going to bring some pressure against our tackles. They're going to try to get after us in the interior of this offense and get some pressure on Miller Moss. But if we can protect, if we can turn around the narrative from a week ago and do a great job in pass protection and give Miller Moss some time, we need to take advantage of those deep shots, right? I remember back to LSU, the go ball to Deuce Robinson, the free play to Jacoby Lane, right? The flea flicker to Mekhi Lemon. I know we didn't hit it, but pushing the ball down the field like that will stretch out a defense. That won't allow them to play tight to the line of scrimmage. That won't allow them to bring as much pressure on Miller Moss and get after the quarterback. They're going to have to respect our speed. So there's multiple ways to do it. I think playing fast and hurry up offense, not allowing Wisconsin to get into a rhythm or to get comfortable is one way. And obviously there's multiple ways to play fast. But the biggest thing for me this week when it comes to being aggressive and starting fast and getting ahead early and playing with a lead is we have to push the football down the field and use some of our speedsters on the outside and our playmakers to our advantage and take the top off of this defense.
In terms of the bad taste that's left in your mouth after Saturday's game, how rewarding is it to then start fast and get in a rhythm quickly?
That's why I say, and it's all 4 quarters are going to matter.
Yes,
but I think early on, that's why I said in my keys of the game, that's why I said earlier at the top of this show, we are going to learn more about this football team, and you could even break that down even more in the first quarter of this game on Saturday than we have in all 3 games combined, right? And I know I sound repetitive, but it's so important. The good teams, the really good teams, or the great teams all respond to adversity differently, right? If you're a good team, you can come back and bounce back and have a close game and still look a little sluggish. If you're a really good team, you'll start fast, but then some of those cracks will start to show throughout the game. The great teams don't lose twice in a row. The great teams come out and make it a point of emphasis, and you can tell this team looks frustrated. This team looks mad. This team looks ready to go. This team responds to adversity the right way. This team came out and spent so much time in preparation this week, and this was a football team that Lincoln Riley had ready to go. And I can think back to games, not even at USC, but other teams around the country where they lose one game, and then I just kind of flash back. Remember Tim Tebow? They lost that game. He gets in the press conference and said, people might have thought at the time, oh, it's cheesy. This is all, clipped articles. He's just saying you'll never see a team prepares, but they did it, right? And those are the great teams. I'm not saying the SC's there yet. I'm not saying that I'm comparing us to Florida or some of the teams that are around the country. We have, the caliber of team to get there yet. We're going in the right direction. Obviously we're going to have to continue to recruit and build into that way and continue to put good players on the field, which we have, but you've got to learn to do that, right? So I think we're going to learn so much about this football team and how they start fast on Saturday and what type of culture we have with this program.
Sorry, this is now Keely question time, and I apologize, but something I've been so curious about is how do you thread the needle between having those takeaways from a loss, making sure you correct those mistakes, but then not focusing on it
harping
too
on
much.
them.
Yeah. Especially for the younger players, because there's a lot of younger players who face that loss on Saturday, and I feel like that would be so easy to get in your mind about that.
Yeah, and that's a great point. It's tough too because I'll put it this way, right? So you've got to be able to move on. You've got to be able to self-scout, but you've also got to be able to put it behind you and turn the page is always kind of the cliche saying. And
that's what we started the show with.
Yeah, no kidding. But it's true. That has to happen, but there's also an element of not allowing the same mistake to happen twice or 3 times or 4 times, because when it becomes an issue or it becomes a pattern, then other teams are going to expose you every single week, right? Until you get it fixed. And if you can't get it fixed, you can't turn the page. You have to spend maybe Tuesday, Wednesday, now Thursday on one-on-one pass rush. You've got to spend an extra day at practice instead of moving to third down or doing something else you want to do, of adding an extra period of working on pass protection or adding an extra period of wrapping up and however you can do that, in game weeks. But not giving up those big-time explosive plays in the run game. Whatever needs to be fixed, that cuts into other preparation time that kind of lingers and keeps going. So that's the biggest issue with it, but also a mental side of it. How many times have you seen an issue to where this quarterback's throwing interceptions, right? And you don't put it behind you, and now you're thinking, instead of I'm going to be dominant this game, all you're thinking is I don't want to throw interceptions. I hope I don't throw another pick.
Yeah.
Or a running back that has a fumbling problem. That it's like, why can't he figure it out? Well, a big part of that is the mental between the ears of I fumbled twice last week. I've never been known for fumbling, but now I fumbled twice, and now a thought that's never been in my head is in my head every game. I hope I don't fumble again. And then I fumble again. If I fumble again, am I done? Am I going to get taken out? Am I going to get benched? So that's where it's tough to find, okay, turn the page because you want to put all that behind you, but also learn from it so it doesn't happen again. But that's a great question. It's tough. That's why they pay people a lot of money in the NFL to be productive, and they're always trying to find your replacement if you're not getting the job done.
And that's also why they pay sports psych people.
Yeah. And that's become a big element in this. That'll be a whole nother podcast. We can go on about that, but that has become a huge factor in today's sports era, not only in football and everything, is how important it is between the ears and up top, and how mentally focused you have to be week in and week out.
And I also just have to give a shout out to USC sports psych people. They are amazing human beings. They work so hard and nonstop. So just while we can, just wanted to give a shout out to them.
And if you're a younger athlete at home too, while we're on that topic, utilize that. If you have that to your advantage, if you have the ability to work with someone on the mental side of the game, if you need it, right? Not everybody needs that, but if you do, take advantage of that, right? I worked with some people when I was in the NFL, when I was in college. I wish I worked with them more. I wish I took more of an advantage of it to prepare you to be mentally tough in those situations. But for my younger players at home, there's no shame in asking for help from a mental coach, from someone to help you to prepare, because they'll help you see the game maybe in a way you haven't before, right? Okay, I've always tried to prepare this way or keep this thing the main thing, and focus on this, but then I let other little thoughts kind of filter in. They can give you techniques and ways to block that out so that you can stay laser focused on Saturday or Sunday or whatever sport you play, whatever game day is, but take advantage of that. I think that's important. I'm glad you brought that up.
We have a question from Frankie that's kind of along the same lines. He said, how does the team bounce back and gain confidence after such a heartbreaking loss?
Win on Saturday, right? That's the best way to do it. Now, I know there's a ton of aspects in preparation that go into winning a football game, and we just talked about getting everything fixed from a week ago that needs to be addressed. But the best way to get the bad taste out of your mouth, to turn the page, to get back on track this season, is winning the next game. And I've talked about the great teams, the really good teams. You don't lose 2 in a row. You figure out how to handle adversity. You figure out how to address the problems from last week, and you don't let them linger. And you go out there and take care of them and come together as a team and trust the guys around you, and you don't let one game define your entire season. You know that, hey, we still have 9 games to go this year, as well as hopefully a Big Ten championship or the playoffs. There's so many opportunities to continue to get better, not only at practice, but on game day. But you go out there and you win, and that's how you put the losses behind you.
Now, tell me if this is the same answer for Sager, who said, what does the team have to show you this week to prove that they are over the Michigan game? Something other than just covering the spread. Thank you both.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's some of the things that I just said, right? Starting fast. How's this team going to respond on opening kickoff to maybe the first half? Are they going to look lackadaisical? Are they going to look frustrated or sluggish, from a loss from last week? Or are they going to look ready to go and prepared and excited to get back out there? So that's a big thing I'll look at. But for me as a football nerd or football junkie, I like to focus on the issues from a week ago and if we fix them, right? So I'm going to be laser focused on the offensive line. Mm-hmm. First and foremost, who's out there?
Yeah.
What's the rotation look like? Are we going to rotate guys? Are we going to rotate tackles now? Are guys going to move around from a week ago? So that's the first thing I'm going to look at is if we got the offensive line fixed. And then the second thing is, are we stopping the run early on, right? It took us, a little bit in the first half to give up some of those big plays. And then until halftime to really get it figured out. And the in-game adjustments, halftime adjustments by Coach Lynn were phenomenal. But when you play a team that prides himself in running the football, that has 3 good running backs like Wisconsin does, you have to start fast by stopping the run. You can't let them get into a rhythm on offense. And again, we talked about last week against Michigan. Recipe for disaster. Starting off 14-0 and being on the wrong side of that, right? Giving Michigan a 14-point lead to a running football team is not what you want to do. Same thing with Wisconsin this year. You have a younger quarterback. He's played in 6 games in his entire life. He's only had 3 starts, right? We want to be able to force him to have to win the game with his arm and not rely on the run game, not get comfortable in the run game. So there's a lot of factors, but the 2 biggest ones for me is stopping the run on defense and how our offensive line is going to perform on Saturday.
That Daddy Manny said Wisconsin is averaging 4 yards per rush. Can we expect a similar attack as Michigan on defense?
Yeah, I think they're going to try to obviously, watch the film from Michigan last week and see where we struggled, whether it was guard pulling runs, whether it was duo runs downhill, combo blocks. And Michigan ran, I think, around 90% of their run plays in between the tackles, right? They were a downhill running football team. I expect Wisconsin to do the same. Now, I told you they're a lot more similar to our run scheme, with guard tackle pulling, with getting on the outside, with zone reads, with they like to put your defensive end in a bind where he has to either, take the quarterback or crash downhill on the running back or not allow the quarterback to get outside. So I would expect them to, continue to stick to their DNA, which is a spread zone read type of offense. But I wouldn't be surprised this week if we see a lot more downhill run game that they put into their game plan.
Mr. Ashcraft said, should we run the ball more, seeing Wisconsin is more vulnerable in its run defense? Also, low the pod, fight on.
Fight on. I think that's a little off with the numbers, right? Now, they are statistically struggling to stop the run, right? And they are a little bit better against the pass, but I think a big part of that was because of the first 2 games they played, right? They played Western Michigan, and then they played South Dakota. Against Alabama, go watch that football game. Alabama was balanced. They could run it. They could throw it. They had so many coverage busts in the back end. They got exposed in coverage. They had man-to-man on the outside, and Alabama was running right by them on multiple plays. They had a freshman who's 17 years old, who's a phenomenal receiver for Alabama, who was just running by them on the outside over and over. They couldn't cover in man-to-man against speed, right? They struggled a little bit there, and they do a good job on defense of mixing up man and zone, right? And they'll try to do both, and I think they're more of a zone-heavy team this year, because they're struggling a little bit on the inside, on the interior. They want to drop more guys in coverage. They want to have more players available instead of getting, ran off in man-to-man and taking themselves out of the play. But, yeah, I mean, I would expect us to try to establish the run, but I still think we need to be pass heavy and let Miller Moss cut it loose if we can protect. If we're struggling in protection, we need to bring in, Woody Marks to block more and help out on the outside. We need to keep a tight end in protection. But overall, I'd love for us to get after this secondary in the pass game and then use the run game if we need to.
Rama said, how important is the home crowd this week?
Huge. Every week. I mean, I've always been a huge advocate for this. I just every time you ask about a home crowd or the Coliseum, talking about filling up the Coliseum or selling out the Coliseum, I just flash back to Stanford. That game, my sophomore year. I can't explain or put into words enough how important it is to have a home field advantage, but also how awesome it is to play in front of a crowd that's locked in, that's tuned into the football game.
There was a buzz during pregame for that game.
It's just crazy.
Remember it so
but look at Michigan. I mean, I tweeted out. I can't remember the last time I was that excited for a football game, and we were still 15 minutes from kickoff. So it's just, you get so excited when you feel, that excitement not only on the field but with the fans as well, and you can feel it from people watching at home. It's just that type of atmosphere that you love playing in front of, that you dream of playing in front of as a kid, and why you want to come to USC. So I'm hoping that we can have home field advantage like Michigan did against us a week ago. Let's get them backed up a couple times. Let's force them to have to call timeout. Let's force them to get off of their game plan because it's so loud they can't hear and they have some false starts or some delay of games. But, that's kind of calling the fans out. We've got to be rocking and ready to go on Saturday, and we got to pack the Collie.
Sacramento Pete said, when former professional players are commentators and they discuss the differences between a college system and a professional playbook, what are the differences?
Yeah, I mean, this question alone could probably be its own episode on a podcast. And I'd have to get my film back out and break down offenses. But, I mean, and it depends on who you're breaking down, right? Our offense is similar to some offenses in the NFL, right? I mean, you could compare us to the Cardinals with Kyler Murray, right? Even the Bears now with Caleb Williams, right? So there's so many comparisons, especially in today's era of the NFL, because when I was playing, or even before me, it used to be a lot more of that pro-style offense that you hear, right? That under center, 80% of the game, play action, power run game over and over, not a lot of shotgun. It was more, rare to see a team in shotgun, maybe on third down or passing situations. But now, majority of NFL offenses are starting to look similar to college, right? You see a lot more of that air raid style in the NFL. You look at Washington, the Commanders with Cliff Kingsbury, right? And Jaden Daniels. He's playing a lot more of a similar offense that he played at LSU, and that's helping him to excel, right? So I think it's important for an NFL offense to formulate their game plan or their scheme to their quarterback and what he does well. But at the same time, that's why you make sure you have to have a quarterback and an offensive coordinator that work well together. And it's so important to have good coaching, right? And the biggest thing outside of playbook-wise in the NFL, and at any level when you get to the next level, is speed. That's the biggest difference for me is everything that you may have, we talked about loud feet earlier, or being quiet in the pocket or having great, eyes before your feet. That needs to be a little bit quicker, right? From high school to college, it's half a second. From college to NFL, it's almost a full second of having to be quicker and having to get through your reads and progression because the defensive line's quicker, the DBs, the makeup speed's quicker. You're going against Jalen Ramsey and all these different guys. But it's a great question by Pete. Again, that would probably take me a full hour and some film study to break down, but maybe that'll be an off-season project we can work on when we get around draft time.
Okay, Pete, remember that. Tweet it, schedule a tweet for February.
There
How about that? Sir William said, just curious, as a university employee, will Keely get to stay longer than other reporters during the practice session? So this is kind of a multi-layer answer, if you will. Technically, yes, but there's so much going on that there are better uses of my time. If I can sneak in a fall camp practice, I will, just because that's the most fun for me personally.
And you can't really report on it anyways. So,
and that's the next layer of this. If I were to see anything, I can't say anything, and I'm so public facing that I try to stay out of practice, and I haven't been to practice in I think half a year at this point, just so I can stay clean and give my thoughts without.
Look at that professionalism.
I'm trying.
Just trying to be unbiased, trying to give you guys everything that we can talk about. They're practicing right now, though, right?
They are.
Yeah.
And that's partially I'll always miss the Wednesday practices. Yeah. But I guess that's the thing is, I don't want to have to self-monitor if we're talking about, hey, what's a package or what's a player that they could utilize this week? And I'm just kind of being like, what's my best poker face? You know what I mean? I'm just really telling you what I think off the top of my head versus I know things, but I can't say it. It's hard that way. And then the final question, an award for most random submission goes to Trojan Ruben, who said, does Cody have a favorite taco spot in Orange County?
Oh.
Which, Ruben, I'm an OC girl, so.
Yeah, I grew up in Bakersfield, so that's tough for me. I'm new to living in Orange County.
Yes.
So there's a taco place I had, actually. I was playing it. It's a little, now we're going off topic here, but we'll wrap it up. I was playing at Newport Beach Country Club.
Okay.
In a golf tournament.
Casual.
And they had a taco truck out there. It's also a location, and I cannot think of the name of it.
Okay.
It's almost like someone please tell me if you know what I'm talking about. I'm gonna probably give you a terrible description, but it was like a cheese wrap quesadilla. They would their quesadillas or their taco wrap would be melted with cheese, and then they would roll it over. It would be like black quesadillas too.
Oh.
They were black quesadillas.
Like corn?
Yeah, and then it was they'd put avocado, chicken, whatever else in the middle, and they would wrap it, and then they would melt it together with cheese. Oh, I'm gonna go get one after this. I'm blanking. Someone knows what I'm talking about. Please in the comments tell me what taco place I'm talking about. But the one I do know that I do get in Newport is, because that's right where we live, is Great Mex.
Okay.
There's a taco spot called Great Mex. I normally get enchiladas. So I don't get tacos there, but
see, Ruben, this was the bad.
Great Mex is good.
Asked.
I know Great Mex is good, and then Sancho's. We have one in Bakersfield too.
Okay.
So Sancho's is another place I go to.
Okay.
I know. Just kidding. All right, let's hear it.
I'm kidding. I don't know why I'm so combative right now.
The food expert over here.
No, I'm not. No,
the taco expert.
I do have to.
I'm kind of taking notes while you say this too, because
okay.
I'm a big taco fan.
Okay, enchilada boy.
I know.
Just kidding. No, I will preface, we podcast through lunch, and so this is just killing us right now.
I'm honestly probably going to order some tacos on the way.
Yeah, honestly. Okay. Miguel's, love them. La Serena and Laguna Beach. I love jalapenos. There's other ones.
Okay, well, I heard favorite taco spot, not how much taco spots.
You said you were taking notes.
Okay.
Do you want to take notes on one spot?
Okay, if you had to pick one, though, right now, you're hungry, we're finishing up, you're getting tacos for me and Emily, and you're trying to impress us with your taco knowledge. Which one are we picking?
Which I was trying. Okay, I don't know.
See?
Sorry. Miguel's.
Okay. All right.
I think it's in Costa Mesa.
I'm getting Miguel's sometime soon, then I'll come back and I'll give
it. It's also drive-through.
I'll give it 1 out of 10 on that.
Sometimes it's clutch. You just want a really good taco without getting
drive-through taco. We're talking. I mean, you could have said Taco Bell then. We're talking drive-through taco
No.
spot?
This is like someone made it and it's good.
Okay. All right. I'll check out Miguel's. Everyone go check out Miguel's and we'll give a rating 1 to 10 in the comments.
Yeah,
me and Emily will go check it out and we'll see what rating we give you.
We'll have a listener meetup at Miguel's.
Okay, perfect.
Not sponsored. Alrighty, that's going to wrap it up, Cody. I know you love to do an outro, so have at it.
No, you're not running. We got score prediction.
Oh,
it's 1-1 right now.
That's
true.
So
we don't count losses. That's
true. Okay.
Score prediction 1-1. Have you even any thought into this at all?
Cody, I was about to wrap up the podcast, so you know that answer.
So I got my score prediction, did some homework, did some research. I'm feeling good about this one. I'm going 35-14 USC.
Oh, interesting.
I think we get back on track on offense. I think our defense comes out and starts fast like we saw in the second half last week. And then I think our offensive line plays well this week and get some confidence back to them.
I know you hate when I ask this, but is 42 a football score?
Yes.
Is it wonky, though?
No.
Okay.
42 would be 6 touchdowns.
Okay, 42-14. How about that?
Okay, so, yeah. So basically, I'm 35-14. You're 42.
What did you say? Oh, 35-14. I thought you said 10.
No, you stuck with it. We're keeping
Sorry.
it. Nope, 35-14, 42-14.
I do this to humor you.
We like it.
Come on.
Okay, with that being said, this has been the last. We're talking tacos, score predictions. We're competitive. Other people need the room. We're getting out of here.
Yes.
It is Wednesday. Hey, last thing I'll say this. So turn the page. Let's move on. Let's come out. Let's support this football team. Let's have the Collie rocking. Let's get back on track. Not only as a football team, but as a fan base. I'm excited. Lincoln Riley's the guy to get the job done. This USC football team has a great culture in place. I think we're going to come out against Wisconsin and really be proud of the product that's on the field. We will talk to you guys on Sunday.
We will.
After a USC win. I'm feeling confident this week.
Go.
Write it down. Fight on. Love you guys. We will see you soon. Now you do your outro. Sorry.
All righty. Why are you sorry? It's all good. That's going to wrap it up for today's episode. Thanks so much for tuning in. That's Cody. I'm Keely. We'll see y'all next time.